You're listening to the Work Cultured Podcast, where good companies keep good company. Hey, welcome back to the Work Cultured Podcast. We are here with some incredible guests. For the first time, we have two folks sitting on a couch instead of just one other person in a chair here. And we've got Min Cho and Angell Sang from S02E07 Chinese Takeout and Delivery here in Austin, Texas. And I'm really excited. You guys have kind of revolutionized delivery and takeout, and we're doing some really important things even well before COVID hit. So this is going to be a really fascinating episode for so many reasons that we'll get into about tipping and culture and how you pay your employees and how you hire your delivery driver. I mean, this is just, it's a fascinating story, but I want to hear from you. You guys give me just quick intro of who you are and what you love about the company.
Well, first, thank you for having us.
Absolutely.
You know, when you mentioned that this podcast was centered around work culture, there was a lot of relevance for us because this is an area that we focus a lot of our resources on. And so anyway, I wanted to say thank you. We're happy to be here. My name is Min Cho. I am the CEO and co-founder of S02E07 Chinese Takeout and Delivery. It was a culmination of a business that, well, my wife and I have been in the restaurant industry and in the business for about 17 years at this point. And, you know, we knew that we loved the Chinese food industry. It was something we were good at, but you know, as you mentioned, in your past life, it was in the Stone Age. There was very little technology, POS systems, even the POS systems that were there were very analog POS systems. And we recognized that there was an opportunity in this market, which, you know, the whole market of America, the total addressable market loves Chinese food, but there wasn't any advancement in the Chinese food industry. And so, we saw an opportunity to do with Chinese food what many pizza establishments have done, the Domino's, the Pizza Huts, the Papa John's, etc. And it made sense. And so I realized early on that in order for us to be able to advance, we needed really good technology. And luckily, I knew Angell Sang. We worked on a couple of projects together and eventually came across this idea. And he hated the idea at first. Because it's, you know, Americanized Chinese food or whatnot, but here we are almost 7 years later, and we're rocking and rolling.
That's incredible. Go ahead, tell us more about you as well.
Yeah, my name is Angell Sang, co-founder, CTO at S02E07 Chinese. The T stands for tasting and technology. So I'm first of all just a big fan of just food, restaurants, but also a long history in working at startups prior to working at S02E07.
But your background, those startups really were nothing like the restaurant industry, right?
Nothing like it. I mean, I did spend time at certain startups that focused on e-commerce.
Okay.
And that expertise came in really handy, was extremely relevant when it comes to selling online.
Yeah.
And that's primarily what S02E07 does.
Okay. And how many employees are you at right now?
Currently, we have about 80 employees.
80. Okay.
And growing fast.
Yeah. Yeah. And give us a picture of the very beginning and then how long it took to where you got to a point of, oh, this is going to work.
Yeah. Well, originally the idea was that Angell and I were just going to set up the business and the technology platform, and our wives were going to run the company.
Okay.
That was the intent. And again, I have a background in restaurants and Chinese food. Angell has a background in our technology. We married our passions and our work experience and skill set to develop the original platform of S02E07. So the software platform, which included the front end, the back end, the local e-commerce website, last mile delivery, communications, everything. But it was a very MVP version of it, right?
Sure.
And we built our first restaurant at 38th and I-35. We took over an old pizza restaurant that had then become defunct. And so we had, I think, $100,000 through a small loan through a small local bank. And with that money, we put in a hood. We rebuilt the restaurant just to be able to cook Chinese food.
Yeah.
And I recall that, we said, hey, look, if we can get $500,000, $600,000 in sales in our first year, we should consider that a win. And instead we did close to 1.5 million, or actually over 1.5 million in our first year.
In your first year.
Yeah.
That's incredible. And you didn't have investors. You had just that loan for the restaurant itself?
Right. Well, we did have a small friends and family interest only round. We didn't give up any equity at that time. It was like, look, we just need a loan just to buy our equipment. That was it. And so we had some generous friends and family. It was just a little bit of money, right? We literally bootstrapped. It felt like a bootstrapped project, but
we spent no money on marketing. We didn't tell anybody.
That's wild. And how did it catch fire?
Well, one, the premise of the model was that we would deliver our own food, so we weren't going to work with third-party companies. So our vehicles had all of our graphics, and our delivery radius is so small; it's only about 3.5, maximum 4 miles from the kitchen. That you see these 4, 5, 6, 7 cars running around in the neighborhood all the time. And again, on the technology and digital side, Angell is really familiar with SEO and knowing how to make sure that our Google AdWords and our Facebook presence and all these other platforms, where we're going to get top hits.
Yeah.
And so the combination of all of that, you've got your mainstream advertising, including, some print ads, combined with all the digital ads and the strategies behind that. And the word spread out real fast, really, really quickly. But then there was another element, which I know we're probably going to get into later, but the whole no tipping concept, right? Free delivery, no tipping. These were words that were unfamiliar in this day and age. And so I think that resonated with a lot of our customers and combined with the good food. And so word got out pretty quickly.
That is really incredible. I definitely want to go there. We have the first question, quote unquote, that I ask is one that I try to ask every single guest. I've obviously already gone through a few questions, so I'll back up and pretend like I remember to ask. And it's kind of an icebreaker because we're going to get into a lot of things that you guys have done really well. But what is a mistake that you've made in leadership that you don't think you'll ever forget?
For me, it was when we transitioned from our restaurant concept just before So. And my wife and I, we ran multiple concepts, and then we started So. And I realized the biggest mistake I was making at that time, in retrospect, was that I was expecting that the employees were working for me, and instead I realized with So that I'm supposed to be working for the employees, and that was a major mind shift for me. And when I was able to embrace and accept that kind of philosophy, it just changed the outlook of really what business employer-employee relationship should look like. And it just made things a lot easier. Recruiting was easier, caring for people was easier, paying them the appropriate amounts was easier. It was more about the employees, and then that was a very contagious type of attitude, and it passed on to our staff. And this is a philosophy we live by today.
That's amazing. Angell, how would you answer that question?
I think for me, it's less of a mistake than it is a way of growing up, I guess, in a way. So I worked in tech for 20 years. When you work in tech, especially in the startup scene, you spend 20 years in there, which is kind of like a bubble. You kind of expect certain things in life as an employer, as an employee, free lunches, unlimited vacations, clock in at 10, leave the office at 4, parties, all that kind of stuff. Which, when you really think about it, almost every tech company, almost everyone, is operating on a runway with a promise of, you know, a 10x return for investors at some point, and you just keep piling in the money. And you know, I think the result is free lunches and parties and that kind of stuff, I think, in the short term. Now being in the restaurant industry, I kind of brought that mentality in, and I was like, you know, man, like, why aren't we granting, like, you know, unlimited vacations? We should just do that. And as an owner of what is essentially a retail business, it's much closer. It's the business isn't operating on a in the red runway like a tech company. We have to think about cash flow and that kind of stuff, and the whole thing is different.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like enlightening for me to leave my startup bubble and see the real world of like how many businesses in the country actually operate on a cash flow basis.
Yeah.
And I had to quickly reset my expectations for what it's like to work for a company and also to run a company.
That's fascinating. Yeah. Because it sounds like you probably at first you were pushing against some of the philosophy and mindset, because you're like, hey, we could take better care of people. But it turns out like you're actually taking better care of people just in a different way that you were used to. And ultimately one that worked out much better in the long run.
I was definitely naive.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, thanks for sharing that. That's good insight. And it is interesting because it's a totally different kind of business, right? I mean, we talked before the podcast, you know, I was in a business that was very cash flow heavy. In fact, it was all, basically billable hours, labor hours. And so, there was no big influx of cash that we can just go spend hoping to build something that would blow up. I mean, it was week after week after week after week. We are paying the bills and we're not, and we're obviously going to pay payroll. But so that brings us back to in the very beginning, you had this mentality of we're going to pay people a livable wage, or whatever the terminology was. Tell me more about that mindset and what made you really stick to it. And I'll keep asking as we go.
Yeah. Well, I think it's important. We probably preface this by the difference between, you know, the word livable wage has so much range.
Yeah.
And different people have different definitions of what that is. And so for us, it was always about offering fair wages, not necessarily the quote unquote livable wage, which is
right.
Shifted so much just in the last 3, 4, 5 years, right?
And one might argue with livable wages $70,000, and I mean, obviously you can't pay everybody that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the city of Austin recently said that for their government employees, the livable wage calculation is somewhere around $23, $24 an hour, and for a 40-hour employee, I think that calculates somewhere around $60,000 or something in Austin, which is true, but. You know, it's going to be hard for these small retail business and operations and restaurants to pay every single employee those kinds of wages.
It'd be almost impossible.
Right.
I think it would be
probably impossible. Yeah. Or we would have to charge $35 for some egg rolls, right? Mm-hmm. And that's not going to happen either. So we try to be fair.
Fair, yeah.
Better than what maybe a lot of our competitors might offer.
It's fair and competitive.
Fair and competitive, right? And so there's a happy medium. And so, there was a little bit of trial and error in there to try to determine what was an appropriate wage that also works with our financial model and such. But one of the things that we realize is that wages is not even the most important thing to a lot of employees. Yeah. It's number one, it's company leadership. Mm-hmm. Right? Are they happy with the leadership and the culture of work? That often comes up as the number one most important thing. Number two is their immediate leadership. So the managers that they work with, their peers. Yeah. What is the work culture and environment like within the store? And also important, but third on that list was compensation. So as long as it was fair, right, and reasonable and competitive. And so that's the formula that we've been working on. And an example that's happened repeatedly, especially during COVID, was employees would leave because at that time, the Amazons and HEP cashiers, they were juicing up their wages because there was such a shortage, and they were now offering $18, $19, $20 an hour.
Yeah.
And very consistently, they would leave, and within a few short months, they would come back saying, look, yeah, I made more money there, but I hated working there. It sucked.
Yeah.
Like, the people were terrible. I'm just much happier here.
And you welcomed them all back.
Oh yeah, 100%.
That's
yeah,
great.
Yeah. So we have a very low termination rate at our business. We just don't do a lot of terminating, a lot of firing, and most of the separations that we have are because the employees they're transitioning, they're moving on. There's nothing ugly about it. Maybe they're going into their career. A lot of our employees are college students. But yeah, so those are things that we're proud of. Our turnover ratio, our turnover rate is relatively low for the industry. And so we think a lot of that, if not almost all of that, is due to the work culture that we've instilled.
That's incredible. I love that. So much that you just said there. Right? Your first priority pillar is you as the leader and the leadership team around you, and then making sure that the people kind of right that next layer are just taking care of people. Wages are important, and you have to be competitive, but it's down the list. I also love that there was a term for that, employees leaving and coming back. They were calling it the boomerang employees. And I thought that was really fascinating because some leaders will get real butthurt, at their people leaving, and just to try to take a stand, like, oh, you can't come back, which is insane to me, but that was a lot of people's mentality. You obviously didn't have that.
No, in fact, I would say it's the opposite. Is even if there was a temporarily ugly separation, we would seek out an opportunity to connect with them again, and whatever bridges may have been burned, rebuild that bridge and see if there's an opportunity for them to come back. I'm reminded by a few employees who left because they were a little unhappy of whatever situations it might be, but every single one of them we've reconnected, and
Wow.
And we were really happy to see each other, and we realized that those are just fleeting moments. We're all human. We have personalities, right? We're not robots and computers all the time. And so at the end of the day, we were still happy to see each other. And so now, every now and then they'll message me, hey, how are things going? I still follow. So I'm really happy to see that, all the success you guys have had. And so, yeah, it's been fantastic. I mean, I know Angell's experienced a lot of similar experiences there too.
Yeah. I think it's also important that you hire right too.
Sure.
I mean, that's like the first step, isn't it? Like you project
right
a
seat.
brand, and the people walk through that door for the interview based off of that brand, perhaps. So already that's like a filtering aspect to it. And then the whole interview process in itself, I think, needs to encapsulate the kind of employee you want to hire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and tell me more about that hiring process. What does your gauntlet look like?
It's a little cutthroat, and I'll get to the point. We want to hire employees who want to work with us.
Yeah.
Right. So this is our current process, is that most of our ads are through Indeed. Mm-hmm. And the first filtering process is that they're required to they look at the ad, and then they're required to go to our website to then apply, not apply
versus
through
the
Indeed.
quick button.
Right.
Yep.
And that already filters out 75% of the people that are on Indeed, which is, did they take the 30 seconds to read the very first line of the job description? Right. So then they apply online. And what we realized in the past is that the interview process is very time consuming, and it's mostly interviewer talking with interviewee just responding to, like a robot. So we shifted that and said, look, you're going to set up a time. And so the next test is, are they even going to show up to the interview?
Yep.
Right. So our first interview is just a virtual interview. We allow a maximum of 10 minutes for that first interview.
Okay.
And so the interviewer, which is our HR person, will speak with the applicant and just ask some basic questions, just test their humanity, if you will. It's not actually a real interview, job experience. We don't ask those questions.
You're looking to see if they show up.
Yeah.
And if they're a
nice,
decent human.
Yeah. Are they nice?
Yeah, right.
Are they breathing?
It's a humanity interview.
Yeah, it truly is. And if the interviewer is like, yeah, you seem like a cool person, I could see you working well with other people, then they set up, in the restaurant world, we call it staging or stage, or for us, they're just shadowing. And what we do is we say, you're going to hang out with us for an hour. This is your hour to interview us, ask us whatever questions you want, and you're going to, for whatever position is, so let's say it's a driver, then you're going to follow a driver, and you're going to ask the driver all kinds of questions, and you're checking us out. We're not interviewing you.
Okay.
And because at the end of the day, we think it's more important that the applicant likes us and wants to work with us than the other way around, right? Because we don't know them, right? We don't know them well enough in 30 minutes to an hour to determine if they're going to be a great employee or not.
Right.
There are signs and flags that we can take a look at, of course. But so after the hour, we then feed them. We want to make sure they like our food, right? Because we don't want them to work at a place that they don't believe in the product.
True.
Right?
Absolutely true. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we ask them, okay, do you want to work with us? And if they say yes, we hire them. And if they have second thoughts, then we'll say, okay, well, take your time and let us know when you're ready. And that's it. And it's that simple. And how much time have we actually used is very, very little.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, we've gone through an incredible screening and filtering process so that we don't waste time in interviews and all this other stuff. Oh, and by the way, the people that are doing the evaluation are their peers, not upper management or anything like that.
Because they want to know that people around them doing what they're doing are people they can get along with.
Yep, exactly.
That's really great. And remind me after the podcast. So I have another guest coming on here in a few weeks, and she has a startup that basically has revolutionized that very first step that you're talking about. So there might be some synergy there. I used her at my last company when she was like in her alpha stage, and saved me and my people tons of time and money. But anyways, totally different topic. I love that approach that they're interviewing you versus the other way around. And if they want to work, I'm like, all right. They showed up, they're human. They saw the work, they like the food, they want to do it.
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
Yep.
Yeah.
So in many ways, we're pitching us to them. And hoping that they like it. And if they feel like, this is a place that they can vibe with and get along with people, then that's the first step is can we get along? Yeah.
So like the hiring process is kind of like you're placing your bet on both sides. Sure. Everyone's kind of like placing their bets on this probability that everything's going to work out. And so it is important at that very first hiring step to try and get that right.
Yeah.
Because when you get it wrong, that there's so much more cost in terms of heartache.
Oh yeah. Everybody listening to this podcast knows how much a bad hire costs.
Yep.
It's not a little bit.
And then rehiring to replace. Yep. It's just the path that we would rather not go. And I think it's one of the hardest things to do.
Yeah.
Because it's still, all the things you put in place still doesn't guarantee you anything. It's really just a probability. Yeah.
And even as incredible as that process is, that still in and of itself isn't going to automatically mean you have low turnover. So what are the next stages? What's the onboarding look like after you've hired this person?
And after that, it's just a little more logistics. We set them up on our payroll with HR. It's all kind of virtual. Emails. We try to simplify the process. We don't want the onboarding process to be tedious. We give every employee, I think, $150 or $200 in credit at SO upon being hired. And part of that is so that they have a budget to buy food.
Yeah.
Right. So we don't have a discount program like many restaurants might have because our incentives are, look, we're just going to give you money in your digital wallet with your account at SO, and you can buy food for yourself. You can buy food for your family or friends. What you do with your credit is entirely up to you. And we think that
I love that.
build some loyalty and some
Yeah.
pride of the product that you're representing. So now I can be like, hey guys, if I work at it and I have $200 in food credit, and I was like, hey guys, lunch is on me. I'm treating, and I can treat my friends, and I can be the cool guy, right?
Do you have any stats or any way visibility of knowing how often that happens?
It's not well articulated yet, but we track every piece of data that we could possibly track in our company. But we do know that there's very few people with a running balance. They use the credits regularly. So it indicates, at least even partially with data and mostly anecdotally anyway, that people enjoy using their food credit.
Yeah.
And also we put the uniforms on there, so they can buy their uniforms. If they need more shirts, they can use their credit.
Yeah.
And so it's just kind of a good way to have that transactional side of the business that really rewards them for their performance, but there's no pressure of this, hey, do I have to get approval from a manager to get a discount? Hey, I want to buy some food for my friends. I need we got rid of all of that unnecessary, arbitrary stress in the business. And this is something that we'll talk about later on is stress mitigation, which has been the big thing that we try to do at So.
Go dive in. Why not?
Well, so our entire work culture is, number one, built around stress mitigation. And what I mean by that is I learned early on that, yeah, there are going to be stresses in business and in work where, you might go through a rush, a piece of equipment breaks down.
Sure.
All kinds of things can happen. But the single most stressful moment or the stressful moments are relational. So people to people. That's where a lot of the stress happens. And this is why management is often so stressed out, because maybe the staff that are working under them are not doing their job, and so they have to discipline them or whatever it might be, or store managers, because the current restaurant or retail format is you have store managers and general managers and assistant managers. We don't have any of that, right? So store managers have the stress of all the happenings and going-ons of that one location. That's a lot of stress, right? And so instead, what we do is we design each store to have multiple departments. That's not too uncommon, but there are no quote-unquote store managers responsible for everything. And no one person, not a single person, is responsible for the behavior of another person. No one is allowed to discipline anyone.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And we did that intentionally because, one, that causes friction between employees, and we don't want that. And by and large, because of the work culture we have, there are very few employees who quote unquote misbehave, right? So it's not a common problem for us anyway.
Okay.
But when those occurrences do happen, we just have a standard reporting process, right? Where whoever witnessed it, maybe one of team leaders, we still have team leaders, but they're not managers in the sense that, in the traditional sense. But team leaders may report it to our ops team. Now, our ops team does have this stress point, which is that they do go in and discipline people.
They have to.
Yeah, but they're trained how to handle these situations. They're trained to make sure that, how to best approach employees or how to mitigate problems, how to de-escalate problems. So they are quote unquote experts in our company. And so we don't have a lot of problems in that sense. In the meantime, the rest of our 80 employees are not yelling at each other or, doing all this other stuff. And so that's a major stress mitigation effort that we have. And as a result of that, we think that we have one of the happiest crews, out there, that they're just genuinely happy.
Wow. Very cool. And I'm curious how that played into when COVID hit. My assumption is your business did well, but culture-wise, work from home was not an option, right? I mean, you weren't being jerks by not letting people work from home. You can't run the business like that.
Right.
So tell me about that whole thing.
Yeah, it was a difficult transition for us too. as owners and founders of the company, because we didn't know what to do, right?
Yeah.
This is our first pandemic that we've experienced.
All of us. Yeah.
Yeah. And what we learned early on is that there was a lot of fear.
Mm-hmm.
And if the general public was expressing that much fear, and there was a lot of anti-Asian sentiment at the time because of,
really curious about that too.
Yeah,
Yep.
China and Wuhan. And here we are selling Chinese food, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So with a lot of intentionality, we decided early on that we needed to connect with our community a lot more than we had already been doing. And this was partially to dispel this idea of fear, and that the food we sell, because it's quote unquote Chinese food, would potentially harm people with the virus. And we did receive messages out there saying, you need to stop selling your food.
That's nuts.
Is your food coming directly from China? If so, I'm not going to order. Yeah, it was real. It was happening.
Wow.
And so it occurred to us, well, if the public and our customers, or some customers, are acting this way, then how might our employees feel, right? Are they afraid of catching the virus or getting sick or being next to another person? And so the first thing we did was, all right, let's make sure that our employees know that we're going to take care of them and that we appreciate them for working. So number one, obviously the PPE stuff. We paid for all the PPE, made sure that we put in rules and regulations to protect everyone. If they got sick and they needed to get tested, we paid for all of that.
Wow.
All visits to emergency care or anything. We actually set up relationships with various clinics, and we just told any employee, hey, if you think you've contracted the virus, then you go here, tell them you're with and we'll pay the bill.
Wow.
So we knew it was going to cut into our profits and all that, right? And we did not expect at the time that our sales were going to be booming during COVID. That wasn't an expectation.
Yeah.
We were like, no, we just need to take care of number one right now, which is our staff. And so we built in a lot of these processes to remind our employees, hey, we care for you a lot. Thank you for working. If you don't want to work, we support you.
Wow.
And when you want to come back, we will accept you with open arms. And yeah, there were a couple of employees who were like, hey, I can't, right? I can't work. This is too much. But the reality of the situation is that people still needed income. And so many of them were like, I don't have a choice. I have to work regardless. And so if that's going to happen, we want to provide the most safe place that we can.
Yeah.
So we didn't allow customers to come into the kitchen or into the lobby area at all. We did curbside pickup through.
Yeah.
And this is way before curbside pickup was really, really popular. We were already doing it.
I mean, that took even HEB quite a bit of time to set up an infrastructure. And I mean, they're usually, as far as grocery goes, they're in front of everyone.
Yeah.
Think about when COVID hit, which was in March 2020, and it took like 9 to 12 months for a lot of companies to really come out with a solution. In the meantime, retailers and restaurants were laying off their employees.
Yeah.
So a lot of them ended up working at So.
Wow.
We obviously didn't lay anyone off.
And you were ready to not lay people off. You were obviously immediately spending money, knowing it was going to cut into profits. Weren't expecting a surge, but then did that surge occur?
Yeah. I don't know exactly how to explain it other than we were well positioned, not deliberately well positioned, but we were well positioned to adapt to the climate that had come around as a result of the pandemic. We are a delivery first business, very takeout ready. Our drivers are trained. Our whole concept, the premise is around us bringing food to you. Half of our business was already contactless anyway.
Yeah.
Right. And so that was a very quick adaptation for us. Right. And so from a business operations and logistics perspective, there was very little adjustment we needed to make during the pandemic. Now, there were many internal things that we did have to adjust for.
Obviously,
certainly. But for us, yes, our sales almost doubled.
Wow.
During the pandemic for the second half of 2020. and all of 2021.
That's incredibly cool.
Yeah.
My SO consumption tripled. I was one exit north of the 38th and I-35 exit at the time, and I was ordering quite a bit.
Yeah. So yeah, so I mean, we're not gonna. I don't want to feel bad about sales. Like, we'll take the sales, but we were, wanting to make sure we took care of our employees. I believe I can sit here and comfortably say that I feel like we did a really good and decent job of taking care of our staff. But we did more than that, and that is that we also really pushed out our So Giving initiative.
Okay.
Which was, again, I told you earlier that one of the things we realized we needed to do was connect with our community a lot more than we had already been doing.
Yep.
Especially around what was being called the China virus or the Wuhan virus.
Yeah.
And again, we're selling Chinese food. And because of the anti-Asian sentiment that was going on around at the time, we needed to connect with our people, remove that fear. And so that actually happened accidentally because, first of all, we found out, we learned very quickly that a lot of restaurants were shutting down, right? Tons of restaurants are shutting down. And it's one of the, if not it's one of the biggest retail,
it's one of the biggest hits and losses through COVID.
Yeah, huge impacts to our economy, which means that there were a lot of people who were jobless very, very quickly. And we know that in the hospitality industry, a lot of the folks are paycheck to paycheck.
Yep.
And if they're losing their tip income or their whatever wages that is that they were earning, they might be struggling. So we just did a short little, not a promotion, but just a little social media post that said, hey, friends in the industry, this was just for service industry people. Friends in the industry, look, no strings attached. Don't have to even tell us your name, whatever. Just, if you need food, just reach out and we'll give you credit and just order food. And we did that, and then it just, that word got out there very, very quick. This is the worst word you could probably use during the pandemic, but it went viral, right? And anyway, and then we realized that there was momentum there, and we were saying, hey, it's not just our service industry folks that are hurting, it's the rest of the community. Retail was shutting down, offices were shutting down, school teachers, other families who might be struggling with food insecurities or, they're losing their paychecks or whatnot. So we started the food drive for So Giving, and we gave away a lot of food, and this is a program that we still do today. And I think we've now donated about $300,000 worth of food.
Wow.
To various programs. Our focuses are primarily with people with food insecurities, including homeless, and youth education, so teachers and families with children. Those are our areas of focus.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredibly noble and generous. We just love to hear about that. That's really incredible. And that's still going on.
Oh, yeah.
Now.
Very active on it. Yeah.
Wow. That's incredible. How was your employees' response to that? Do you feel like that also bolstered the culture and just the buy-in for who you guys are and what you do?
Yeah, 100%. So this was all part of the whole, I'll connect the dots here. So,
okay.
Having the So Giving initiative, and we were paying employees to be part of the curb drive. So it felt like a volunteer type of thing, but we were like, hey, you're still on the payroll, but you're going to help and assist on the So Giving initiative stuff that we do, handing out food and things like that. We also had a bunch of volunteers that came in and helped as well. A lot of people came up and said, hey, can I just pick up food and donate to other people? And we're like, oh yeah, 100%, come on in. But I think it reminded our staff and our employees that, once again, as a culture in this company, that we need to give back. It's in our DNA. Look, we are a for-profit company, and so we are generating revenues and ideally generating profits from the people who we sell to our consumers. But you have to support and give back to that same community that you're making money from. And I think this goes back to our early roots, which is when we reorganized the company to becoming a public benefit corporation. So I don't know if you're aware of this, but we are filed as a public benefit corporation.
Okay.
We're a certified B Corp, which is basically it's written in our bylaws, in our corporate bylaws. So we are legally and required to have a positive social impact, to try to have a low carbon footprint, to support and give back to our community. These are things written in our bylaws so that it reminds us as founders what's most important.
Yeah.
Right. And this was an important decision for us because there are shareholders at stake here. And this allows us to, by officially signing on as a public benefit corporation legally, the shareholder profits is not our only concern.
Yep.
It's also, what we do to the community. And so all of our shareholders are aware of this and they have buy-in as well.
Yeah.
And what I think that's done for us is that we have a great cap table of like-minded investors, right? Who support the things that we do, the decisions we make. And so it's created wonderful synergy, for us.
That is incredible. And now you mentioned investors. So you obviously grew, had an incredible first year, but you have expanded, and to expand, I guess you brought on some investment.
Yeah. We knew early on that if we wanted to scale, we knew early on we did want to scale. That's why we poured in a lot of time and money. And
you don't build that technology infrastructure for a shop.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. We joke often, which is like, we could have not spent $1 million on our software and had realized those in profits instead. But we're bringing on investment so that we can scale quickly, open more stores. We have a very scalable model, both on our software and tech side, which Angell has just done a terrific job with leading, with our development team, and building more brick and mortar stores so that and these kitchens. But they also bring leadership and experience, which is invaluable. So most of our investors are very strategic investors, people who bring more than just capital for us to grow. A lot of them are advisors. Some of them are just cash, to be honest. But but
even the ones that are just cash, as you mentioned, are like-minded.
Yes, absolutely.
By law.
But legally like-minded. Yeah. But we have a lot of advisors, people who genuinely care about the things we do. We receive comments and compliments a lot from our investment group saying, hey, I saw this article about what you did here and what you did there. Congratulations. I get text messages every now and then.
That's awesome.
It's all feel-good stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty proud of what we've done so far to stay grounded, to remind us to be humble and modest in what we do. But we can also still do this and not feel bad about being successful and trying to be a profitable company.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, everything sounds amazing so far. Every business has its challenges, though. What are some challenges that you're facing amidst all of the success?
Well, I feel like I've spoken a lot, so I'm going to let Angell talk about especially the technological challenges, because there's a lot there. Especially because there are so many things we want to do.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about the software, right? So like when we had the idea probably in 2015, and we started writing code in 2016, and then the official doors opened in 2017. And I think we've rewritten the code base twice now.
Wow.
And all the serve new feature requests or whatever. And, we realized, we could do this. We could make this architecture so much better, et cetera. And so, I mean, it's a pretty typical startup story. And I think maybe one thing that was kind of scary was Russia invading Ukraine, and all of our developers are in Ukraine.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So
the person I mentioned earlier, her developers are there too.
Yeah. A lot of developers are there. One of the reasons why we went that direction is that throughout my startup career, I spent a lot of time with contractors in Ukraine. Personally been there multiple times. And it was very, very comfortable working with them, and I have a lot of respect for them. And so, and I love our team right now. And it was very scary when it first happened, when Russia invaded. And so, luckily, everyone was okay.
Yeah.
What's super interesting is that their response, my Ukrainian team, their response was, what really happened is that, when Russia invaded, many of the parts of the primary economy of Ukraine shut down.
Mm-hmm.
And that country is starved for resources in order to pile into their military, in order to fight back, etc., keep their lights on, repair. I mean, there's devastating things that are happening.
They're also overseas, but they're also they're still part of your team.
Yes.
And so culturally, I mean, we're sitting pretty over here in America.
Yeah.
You've got these employees, these people on your team struggling in ways that we don't, we have no idea.
Unimaginable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was that impact?
I'm so proud of them. Like their courage and resolve and like in the face of terrible things is incredible. And the response really was, look, we can work. We have computers and we have internet. And at the end of the day, we're generating revenue, and we got to pay taxes to the country. And those taxes
are help
the country to survive.
Yeah. Wow.
And so they're like, let's double down. Give me more work.
Wow.
Let me work more hours. Because at the end of the day, that's not
beyond
just personal.
Resilience. That's something else.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was definitely at first super scary. The response that our team had, I was so proud of them.
Wow. That's insane. So cool. Stateside, and like overall culture wise, what are some challenges?
Well, there was the hiring challenge, right? Just not having enough staff, which often leads to asking existing employees to work more shifts, which can become a stressful time and moment.
Burnout, and that's the very thing you're trying to mitigate.
Right, exactly. Fortunately, we deep dived into what our hiring practices were, which were already pretty solid. But they weren't really designed for this massive labor shortage that we now have. So we made some changes. And now, for about almost a year now, we've been fully staffed. So we're probably one of few restaurant concepts in the Austin area that's been fully staffed for this long time period. Don't get me wrong, we're always hiring because we keep on growing, and
you're growing, and turnover is real, no matter
especially
in service and hospitality. Yep.
But by and large, we've been fully staffed for the better part of a year now. And what we realized we could do was do some minor shifts in our operations that don't have a massive impact on the day-to-day operations for the employees. So for example, we were 75% delivery, 25% carry out for most of our revenue.
Okay.
We made just a couple of minor shifts on our website, and we're now almost 60% delivery, 40% carry out, which means that we don't have to hire as many delivery drivers.
Okay.
Right. And there's a lot more efficiency in the business. And so even small operational shifts like that have a direct impact on the stress levels of certain employees.
Right.
Of our hiring manager, who was just like pulling her hair out because we need to hire more drivers.
Yeah.
Like, okay, look, we're going to try to soften this up for you a little bit. Let's make a little shift in some of the things that we do. Now, the good and bad news about this is that our delivery times on busy nights are still long, which is not a good thing, but it tells us that we still have a lot of demand for our delivery. So we know there's lots of room for improvement on all sides. But in the meantime, and this is what Angel and I do, especially, Angel does it more on the tech side. I do it more on the operational side. There's a lot of tech and operations within the stores, but we are detectives looking for inefficiencies within our store. This is what we do every day, right? Is what is the bottleneck of the day, right? Let's find it. Let's get rid of the bottleneck. Let's find, some efficiencies. And so I'm not saying we're a perfectly well-oiled machine yet, but we're definitely getting there. It's much like Tesla. Tesla is, the cars are awesome, but they still have a lot of little problems here and there. But their foundation is great. The vehicles, the EV, the things that they've done are fantastic. Say what you want to say about Elon Musk, but I'm just talking about the car.
We're not talking about
him. But the car itself, there are a lot of little small intricate problems, but at the end of the day, it's a real solid foundation, and it's just constantly improving. And that's the way we look at our business too.
We keep mentioning there's this tension on labor shortage, wages. We can talk about tips. And I think, like, if you want to really boil it down to basics for us, our business is we make something that people want, and then we have software that we built so you can order it, and then we get it to you. That's really the basics, right? And you could say the same for, it's Walmart, it's Amazon, it's GameStop, it's any store that sells something. And in general, I'm just speaking as a macroeconomic economist here, that it's just a supply demand, right? Simple, right? But it's not, because we're not just selling a thing, a widget. We're actually selling food, and that basically means we're a restaurant. We are a restaurant. And so going back to the tension of labor shortage, wages, tips, etc., it's really important actually to understand how we got here as a restaurant. In the restaurant industry, the restaurant industry has a really, really long history of wage suppression and wage diversion to tipping. And that in return, from a macroeconomic standpoint, results in what your menu prices look like as an American. And take that culture and the pricing model and the labor model and multiply it by however many years it's been. It's been over 100 years. Everyone's born into this. You're born expecting fairly affordable pricing. Which means pricing is really just directly correlated with the wages.
It's artificially low, the same way fast fashion is. Right? Like a t-shirt shouldn't cost $8.
Exactly.
Like something is broken in that
someone
supply chain.
sacrificed.
Yes, big time.
Someone got hurt. Right? And it's years of it, so we are just accept it. We just accept it as normal, right?
Plausible deniability. There's too many layers between me and that person who made my phone or whatever that I don't feel the impact, but it's real, and your people will feel it. And it sounds like you've had to overcome that on all fronts: the consumer expectations, the employee expectations, everything in between.
Everything's mapped together, and when you change one thing, then everything else gets changed. So, we want to raise our prices. Then everyone's like, I can't pay $30 for a General Tso chicken or an egg roll. Well, I'm like, everything that's packaged in there, which is like the health insurance for our employees. And then oftentimes people will be like, well, if you can't run your business affordably, where you can't price your General Tso chicken at $10, then you might as well just go out of business. and that's kind of just like just give up then. And I don't, there's that tension it's still there.
It sounds like the tension's there, but that there's enough folks even in our current economy, it's struggling. It sounds like there's enough people that do get it and are on board because you're still growing, right?
Yeah, I love ripping the cover off
Absolutely.
to let people see like how does the machine work? Because when you see how the machine works, it's not just our business, but really the industry.
Yeah.
You realize why prices are the way they are, why wages are the way they are, why there's a labor shortage, why restaurants lose money, what the margins are so thin for restaurants. Yeah.
Yep. Wow. Yeah. This is all fascinating. Yeah. Peeling back the layers is an interesting exercise. I'm sure you have to do every time you have to revisit pricing, wages, benefits, et cetera. Wow.
Yeah. There are a lot of moving parts here. But again, this is what, the founding team does is we try to simplify the model as much as we can and make it repeatable and scalable. But there are some core foundational decisions we made early on that we stick our guns to, and we're just, I think the free delivery, no tipping is a major part of our identity as a business.
I mean, in fact, even just looking at your website, on this show, I'm typically looking for core values. What are your core values? Because I didn't find any. Maybe you have them, but it doesn't matter to you to put it out there. But no tipping and free delivery and all that. That's at the forefront. I mean,
sort of the consumer core values. What's important to our consumers, and so not nickel and diming. No extraneous charges here and there. Just build it all into the price and still find a way to make it affordable. So, today our General Tso chicken, I believe it's $15, which if you go to another Chinese mom and pop restaurant, it's around the same price, but ours will include delivery and will include the no tipping aspect as well. And so in value, theoretically, there's much greater value too. Because if you ordered General Tso chicken through DoorDash or Uber Eats today, let's say it was a $20 meal, but after delivery and tip, all of a sudden it's a $30, $35 meal, right? That's incrementally
and those drivers aren't making as much. Like that struggle for, how long is it going to take? I'm like sitting around, and is the person going to tip me or not? It's a nightmare.
It is. And I think a lot of people have this wrong mythical impression that the drivers for DoorDash and Uber Eats are making a lot of money. But the reality is there are a few that do, because they've worked the system and they know how, what are the hot spots and things like that. But at the end of the day, the average third-party delivery driver earns less than $15 an hour.
And it's their own car too.
And they have to pay for the fuel, the insurance, the maintenance, and all that on their car. Which means at the end of, after all that net, they're probably earning $10 to $12 an hour. Right. But we're paying,
and they have to pay their own taxes.
Right, they're contract employees, so now they have to pay the self-employment taxes and all of that too. But we're all W-2 employees, right? No contract employees at our store. They start at $14 an hour, but we provide the vehicles. Right, and a large percentage of our employees don't even have cars. They have a driver's license, obviously.
They figure out how to get to the car
and walk to work or take a bus or get a ride.
Right. And this is a good decision on our behalf, because now our pool of potential employees or potential drivers isn't limited to only people who have the willingness and desire to use their cars for delivery. And a lot of people don't want to do that, right? They would rather not. And so...
And also, if that had been your model from the very beginning, you wouldn't have had that logo trucking around that 3.5 mile radius, and you might not be here today.
And we're always looking for best deals on vehicles. We just purchased 2 Chevy Bolt EVs, and they're going to get wrapped here pretty soon. And,
cool.
And so now all of our future locations, they're going to have the charging infrastructure built into the store, so that we can charge at a much lower rate instead of these retail marked up rates. And, and again, it's all about building efficiencies. How do we lower expenses? But our labor percentage, from a financial model, is the highest line item on our P&Ls.
Oh yeah.
And we don't. Of course, we want to lower it, but we're kind of proud at the same time that we're paying what we believe are fair wages, and that it is the highest line item on our
Yep.
on our
Well,
P&L.
isn't it like we took a normal restaurant P&L and we moved the cost from, let's say, marketing and rent, and we moved it into the hands of our employees?
Yeah.
That's really what it is. It's
Yep.
just a shift.
Yep.
So
Yeah, our margins aren't higher than maybe another. I mean, we do pretty good on our margins, but our margins aren't necessarily higher than many other restaurants because we have lower rent or lower marketing or lower overhead. That gets shifted to our labor, all right? And so it's just a shift of margins. But the business is doing well. The free delivery, no tipping has been a massive part of our culture. I think our employees buy in to that model, and they're like, "Yeah, this is." So this is an interesting thing. Is we are currently exploring the idea of allowing certain employees to use their own vehicles and earn a higher wage, right?
Okay.
Still no tipping, and still it would be a free delivery to the customer, but to earn a higher wage, but they use their own vehicles because there's cost involved in owning and operating our company.
A fleet,
cars, right?
yep.
Yeah, a fleet of vehicles. So we asked and we polled all of our drivers. Not a single one of them said that they would use their car. Not one.
Not one. Wow.
Yeah. Even at a considerably higher rate.
So that idea is scrapped.
Well,
Or no, not really. Okay.
no, it's because once again I talk about buy-in. Those employees that have bought into our concept are
Yeah.
here because
of that concept.
Because of that, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if we now started advertising an opportunity for people to use their own cars, maybe they are a Domino's driver or an Uber Eats driver. But
Exactly,
they want more
yeah.
consistent wages. Not worry about the day-to-day changes of whether they're going to get tipped appropriately. Am I going to earn $5 an hour
Yeah.
this week, or am I going to earn $30 an hour this week? And we provide consistency and stability.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously from a CapEx perspective, that lets you scale with cash flow maintenance. So that'll be really interesting to see how that goes.
Yep.
I've taken a lot of y'all's time, and in the interest of time and knowing you have to get out of here, we're going to just kind of move through the last two sections. Before the last thing we do, just what's something that you want to plug? I mean, obviously, so if you're in the Austin area and you haven't had it, because I'll shamelessly plug you guys. It's delicious. They're taking care of their people. It is a obviously human first company. Love that. So plugging that for sure. But is there anything else that you want to plug, whether it's the community impact or something else that you're working on?
we've got a Round Rock location in development right now that's finishing up our construction, and hopefully we have it open by end of March, maybe April. Don't hold us to that though. But yeah, it'll be on in Round Rock, right off of I-35, really close to. There's a brand new Starbucks there and a Tumble 22. So,
which is also delicious. Yeah. Okay. Anything come to mind?
I think for us, it's more about if we could get our customers to continue to support our community, because it's such an important thing. I don't want to sound all, cliche here, but supporting the community is truly an important thing. I sit on the board at the Asian Chamber of Commerce. I was chair of the board for the Austin Asian Community Health Initiative for a while. And again, being involved with the local community and with the people is truly a part of our DNA. This is, again, why we are formally, organized as a public benefit corporation. Our wives, so my wife, Jenna, who's our culinary officer, and Angell's wife is our chief culture officer.
Oh, wow.
Right? And so we have positions built to do a lot of the things that we're talking about today, right? So these aren't just necessarily, by mistake or accident or happenstance. We are trying our best right now to really put those core values in place. I guess I could plug what we are saying is going to be we're literally working on our core values right now. I know it's way late in the game, but it's be kind, right? Yeah. That's our theme, right? Our motto, if you would.
Overarching, yeah.
And then, the K, I think, was knowledgeable. I was inspirational. N was neighborly. and D was dedicated, and then they have the descriptive words behind that. And so we're just telling people, do those things and combine it all with being kind. And so now in our stores, you see a hashtag be kind. And so I think at the end of the day, that's the most important value, is just be kind, be a human, be friendly, be nice. And if you can do that, then the world will be a better place and it'll be much easier to work at so too. But yeah.
And another thing that we teach our employees, but I think is probably something we should all be doing ourselves personally, which is when someone asks you a request or a favor or question, or even just walks up to you, your first response is, how can I help you?
Mm-hmm.
How can I help? And so, like, that's just a great life motto.
I love that.
Yeah.
Great plug. Well, to end off, we always just kind of do a quick fire. It's a this or a that. So I'll say 2 words. You tell me your preference. Menu first, Angel, you second. So first one, call or text?
Text.
Call?
Okay. Board games or video games?
Board games.
Video games.
Video games. Would you prefer to live in the country or in the city?
Country.
City.
I love this. This one's real local. So for our outside of Austin people, you may not get this, but Taco Deli or Torchy's?
Torchy's.
Taco Deli.
This is great. Now, this one is specific for you guys because I'm curious what the restaurant you run, delivery or dine-in. Takeout's not an option.
Dine in.
Okay.
Dine in.
Oh, finally agreed on something.
Yeah.
I love it. Hey, this has been insightful, fun, inspiring. Thank you both so much for being on the show. I appreciate everything that you talked about, that you shared. Any closing thoughts?
Yeah. Well, again, thanks for having us, allowing us to share our story. The Chinese food culture has had a bit of a bad rap, for many decades. And there are so many layers to peel back and to look at the history and the story of the origination of Chinese food. We've done a number of podcasts where we could get into a lot of that. But really, even the food we sell is what we call authentically Chinese American food, right? Because it has a life and a culture of its own.
Yeah. Wow.
And so, again, I just want to say thanks for letting us share our story, because I think if you do a deeper dive into what we're trying to do in this company and with the employees and for our customers, I think you realize there's a lot more there than meets the eye.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. We've had Mid and Show and Angel Sang from Chinese takeout and delivery. Did I switch it? Is it delivery and takeout?
It was right.
Perfect. This has been Work Culture Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.